Welcome to the Weston Sports Show. I'm your host, Hudson Weinberg, with my co-host, Josh Wallace. So today we'll be looking at college football. This season has been full of a lot of surprises this far and is guaranteed to continue this week with top teams battling for spots in the college football playoffs. We have conference championship games that feature powerhouses like Georgia and Alabama, up-and-coming programs like Cincinnati and Baylor. And let's start out with the SEC. It features number 1 ranked Georgia and 3rd ranked Alabama. Josh, what's your prediction for this game?
Well, I think Georgia will win this game, but I think this will be the biggest test for Georgia throughout the year. Even in the college football playoffs, I feel Bama will be the toughest opponent for Georgia, but I think Georgia will be able to come out on top. Another thing I want to see is how Bryce Young will play and see if he can win the Heisman and how he can go against that strong Georgia defense.
Yeah, I think that Georgia will win this game. Bama, it'll be a tough game. It'll be a very close game with the battle of the arguably two best coaches in college football, Kirby Smart and Nick Saban. Nick Saban building a powerhouse in Alabama. And Kirby Smart, they haven't quite built an absolute powerhouse in Georgia, but they've always been around. They've always been in around the top 10. And but I think Alabama will lose and be dropped out of the college football playoff. I think another team will jump up and take their spot. The resume, you lose, but they're in 3rd, so we'll see how that goes. We'll transition on to the Big 12 championship with the Midwestern showdown of Baylor and Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State is, correct me if I'm wrong, the 5th team right now, so they're the first one out, trying to cop in here. And if Bama loses, I see them jumping in, because if they beat Baylor, of course. So, Josh, who's winning for you?
I have Oklahoma State winning, but one thing to look at is, like you just said, if Bama loses, Oklahoma State will probably jump in, being the 5th seed. But if we're looking at it, it will take a miracle for Baylor to make it. But if Bama loses, then Michigan loses to Iowa, and Cincinnati loses. Of course, they also have to beat Oklahoma State. They also do probably have a chance to make college football playoffs. They would need a miracle, but they do have a chance, and you cannot count them out yet. One thing you need to look at it, though, is that the Baylor QB, Gary Bohan, is questionable for the game right now with a hamstring, so that could play a big factor for Baylor if he's out, because he has been a pretty big impact for Baylor this year. And then another thing is Oklahoma State has already beat them this year, and it was a very defensive showdown. So we'll have to see what will happen this game. Yeah,
you mentioned defense. Oklahoma State has probably the second best, first best defense, depending on how you look at it. It's their best team in a decade probably. They're strong on both sides. They beat Oklahoma, which was a big win. They beat them 24-14, I believe. And, Oklahoma's had a struggle this year, but that's still a top 10 win. Oklahoma's a strong team. That resume is very strong for Oklahoma State. So I think that they will beat Baylor, and I think they will jump in and steal one of the spots into the playoff, probably the 4 seed. The 4 seed currently, Cincinnati, in the AAC championship, they're playing Houston, and the AAC's a pretty weak conference, we can both agree. Cincinnati, they are undefeated. It's hard to knock out an undefeated team from the playoff, but they beat Notre Dame, which is probably the most significant win. Josh, it's pretty obvious that they're going to win this game, but do you think they deserve to be in the playoff?
Well, I would not count Houston out yet, because who knows what can happen. So, if Houston is able to win the game, Cincinnati will probably be bounced out. But like you said, they're in a very weak conference. Their only really strong win was to Notre Dame this year, which Notre Dame is ranked 6, so that was a pretty impressive win. But I would say that I don't think they should be in it. I personally don't think they're the 4th best team in college football, but if they are undefeated, you cannot kick them out of the playoff.
Yeah, it's just hard to knock out an undefeated team, because even though they haven't had the strongest schedule, the best wins, they're undefeated, and that's hard to do in college football. So, Notre Dame is a good team. I don't think they really should be in it. I think they should. If they had another loss, then they would have been out of it already. They probably would have been ranked 7 or 8. But Notre Dame, you mentioned, they have a very outside chance because they're not in a conference, so they don't play a conference championship game. I don't know. Is there any miracle situation where Notre Dame gets in here, or is it just everyone losing?
I think they would need a lot of people to lose for them to get in. So, like you said, it'll probably take a miracle, but it could happen.
Do you think Notre Dame should join a conference, or do you think they should stay independent?
I don't know.
No, you don't know. All right. We'll head on, lastly, to the Big Ten. Besides the SEC game, one of the best games of the week, Jim Harbaugh's Michigan will go off against Iowa. Iowa was, for about half the season, one of the best teams in college football, but they took some bad losses. They lost to Purdue. They kind of fell apart towards the end of the season. Michigan has quite the opposite. Michigan's heated up. They're now up to 2 after beating Ohio State for the first time since 2011. Josh, what are your game picks here?
I mean, I have Michigan winning this game pretty easily because I think Michigan is a better team. And I think Michigan can make a very deep run in the college football playoffs. I think that win versus Ohio State really proved who they can be and who they really are as a team.
Yep, some bright spots on Michigan, of course. Hassan Haskins, who in this Ohio State game, I believe he had 5 touchdowns, which is really insane. You know, he's probably the second best running back, right behind Kenneth Walker at Michigan State. Another big spot on the team, Aiden Hutchinson, the star defensive end, who, if Bryce Young takes a bad loss to Georgia, probably could, and he has a good game against Iowa, could probably jump up to Heisman. Do you think he'll win Heisman, or?
I mean, like you said, if Bryce Young does have a poor game versus the strong Georgia defense, and Hutchinson maybe has like 2 or 3 sacks in this game versus Iowa, I think he has a very good chance at winning the Heisman.
Yep, this is definitely one of Michigan's most successful teams. If they win, they're easily in. There's no way to bounce them out here. So we'd like to thank you for covering these conference championship games. I'm your host, Hudson, co-host by Josh, and thank you.
Thank you.